What's up, babes? It's Alex or Black Guy here. Today we're going to discuss the controversy surrounding the new SMITE HUD that dropped with the 10.3 update. As this video is going to be more serious in nature, I will try to be respectful towards every argument, and all I ask is that you show me the same respect towards my arguments. Feel free to debate this topic in the comments, but please keep it civil. Shit talking or name calling or anything of the like does absolutely nothing to further an argument. Firstly, let's go over the timeline of events that occurred. With Smite's Season of Hope, Hi-Rez introduced a brand new HUD that would be shared with both KBM and controller players. This also means that each input would use the same item store layout. Previously, each input had their own HUD, with KBM players having much more customization options. Each input also had a different store with vastly different layouts. For example, here is the console HUD and store, and here is the KBM HUD in store. Feel free to rewind and pause if you need to look at it longer to spot the differences. Updating the HUD so that KBM and controller players have the same HUD also allows for the return of HUD skins. When this was announced, there was a mixed reaction of excitement and nervousness, but overall nothing too serious. KBM players were extremely excited for the most part, but controller players weren't too excited, particularly towards the item store. This is because it is so much different from their current item store that a lot of players simply didn't want to ruin years of built up muscle memory to learn a new store. Soon after the update show, public test servers, or PTS, dropped, and I'd argue that most players that tried PTS loved the new HUD, and even the store. Although, and I can't really prove this, but I'm strongly under the belief that most PTS players played on a keyboard and mouse, as it's much more accessible on a computer than a console. So if most PTS players were on PC, it makes sense that the majority of the feedback was positive. Then the actual patch dropped, and there was an immediate pushback to the HUD primarily from console players. New update is a slap in the face to people on console, not gonna lie. Revert the console store. I know most console users are having difficulty with this HUD, but as a PC player, I also cannot stand how this HUD is. It's way too condensed, and there's too much going on. Please consider giving us the option to toggle which HUD we want to use. Later that same day, Smite Game announced, "We have disabled the new HUD update due to technical issues, which impacted performance for some players. Players will see the classic HUD after restarting their clients. Additionally, we hear your concerns about some aspects of the new HUD, particularly related to the console store navigation and some custom layout issues. The team is discussing if and how the new HUD can address this feedback, or if we will remain on the classic HUD going forward." There was mixed reaction to this, but I'll go over some specific tweets later in the video. Upon reverting the layout, a bug occurred where essentially every player's classic HUD was messed up in some way. Here's an example of how In My Zen's HUD looked. Smite Game then addressed this by telling players to go to the HUD editor, hit reset, and then apply to fix the issues. But even then, the HUD would switch back to the buggy looking state upon starting a new match of Smite. It's also worth noting that the CEO of Hi-Rez Studios tweeted a poll asking console players which HUD they preferred, gathering 3,600 votes with the old HUD winning. I asked the CEO for some clarification about this tweet, and he responded by informing us that the new HUD and the store is a package deal. Hi-Rez currently cannot implement an update where you can choose the new HUD paired with the old item shop or vice versa. Smite's lead game designer, Titan Clumsy, also tweeted a poll asking all Smite players which HUD they prefer, garnering 4,900 votes with the new HUD winning. I'll come back to this later. A few days later, Smite Game tweeted again regarding the HUD, simply stating that they forced a HUD reset to fix any lingering issues following the revert. They then said that they will have more information to share about the HUD next week. And that is where the controversy stands as of this video being uploaded. A significant portion of the community loving the new HUD and item shop, while another significant portion despises the new HUD and item shop, and wanting it completely reverted. Now let's briefly go over the arguments for each side. Starting with the side that wants the new HUD, most of them just simply enjoy the customization options it presents and enjoy the modernized layout. A lot of people were also very excited for the return of HUD skins. I think this part of the argument is fairly straightforward and easy to understand, but there are two other portions to it that I don't see many people talking about. Having a HUD shared by both keyboard and mouse and controller players allows Hi-Rez to update them more efficiently. Previously, if Hi-Rez needed to make any store or HUD changes, they'd have to update 2 stores instead of just 1. Having a combined HUD allows for less time spent updating the HUD, which allows for more time to be spent on other aspects of Smite. Finally, and I'll admit that this is more of a personal opinion, but I believe having a combined HUD will further close the gap between controller and keyboard and mouse players. This could create a larger sense of community and will shift perception away from the controller player or KBM player stereotypes. Going over the side that doesn't want the new HUD, there's a variety of reasons. Kind of the opposite of the previous side, some just don't want it for not liking the new layout and modernized look. Some, and mainly controller players, do not want to adapt to the new item store. Speaking of controller players, a large portion of players on this side are actually controller players, and complain that the new HUD caused a ton of lag, frame drops, stuttering, and things of the like. The game ran at 10 FPS most of the time, and it's been fixed since the revert. I'm not against the new UI, I just want my frames. It wasn't just the store, it was the game in general. Another thing was when we would adjust our HUD, it would shrink. I did experience lag every time I opened it, with it pertaining to the store. Item descriptions would get stuck on the screen. I think this is a key piece of information that people are overlooking. With all these bugs and performance issues happening to so many players, of course they won't want the new HUD, and I personally don't blame them. Having to deal with extremely frustrating bugs every time you open the item store? Yeah, I wouldn't want that either if it was happening to me. I'm going to spend the rest of this video going over a few popular tweets and suggestions that I thought was worth discussing, followed by my overall opinion on the matter. Starting off, a very common suggestion I've seen is having the option to toggle between the new HUD and the old HUD. This allows for people that like the new HUD to use it, while giving players that dislike it the option to use the legacy HUD. While this works on paper, I don't even know if Hi-Rez has the capability of doing this, and also doesn't fix the issues that they are trying to solve with the new HUD. More efficient updating, more customization options for controller players, return of HUD skins, etc. Earlier, I mentioned some polls from the CEO and from Clumsy, and I wanted to go over it because people seem to think that these are like definitive proof that we're getting or not getting the old HUD back. Involving the CEO's poll, he only asked controller players about their opinion, which isn't really fair as the HUD update affects both controller and KBM players. With Clumsy's poll, and this also pertains to the previous poll, his following and Twitter in general just isn't reflective of the entire SMITE community. While both polls provide valuable feedback, I do think it's inconclusive when it comes to how the entire community feels about the HUD. Although, if you did read the comments, it does help Hi-Rez gather specific feedback about the bugs and performance issues, which I think is a positive. When Hi-Rez made the decision to revert the HUD, there were a few popular reactions that I wanted to discuss. And before going over these reactions, please understand that I am on good terms with every person shown, and this isn't like a personal attack. I just see some flaws in their argument that I want to point out. The first comes from Weekend, who tweeted a video showcasing that he wasn't having an issue navigating the item store on controller, even though it's been a while since he's played SMITE on controller. The main issue with this is that the new item store is extremely similar to the old PC item store, so of course PC players will have less trouble navigating it than regular controller players, even if they don't normally play on controller. I actually commented this on his tweet and was called a cuck, and I'm still trying to figure out how he knew that. Next comes from Rexy, who vented frustrations towards people that didn't give the new HUD and item store a chance before coming to a conclusion about it. He later clarified that he understands the bugs and issues and was focusing on those that dislike the store solely due to the fact that it's different and they didn't want to adapt. I actually completely agree with this take, except I wanted to highlight the fact that he generalized controller players and resorted to name calling. While it was very minor and he could have chosen much worse language, I think when having discussions about controversy, it's important to completely stay away from name calling. So arguing or debating in this way could actually hurt your argument instead of helping it, even if your base argument is completely valid. And before people say something like this community is so soft or this community is so sensitive, I can guarantee it's easier to change your wording and tone of voice than it is for others to be less sensitive. Next is from FineOK, who tweeted a temporary fix for controller players by encouraging them to make a custom build so all the items you want will show up. While I agree that this is a good temporary fix, I think it's worth acknowledging that this could create some bad habits of controller players trying to find a workaround instead of just learning the new store. Finally, I want to talk about a tweet from one of the Olympians. He states he doesn't like the muscle memory defense, where many people are saying a big reason others don't like the new item store is because they are used to the old store. He says the argument doesn't negate valid criticisms of how clunky and inefficient it feels, and then explains more about why he thinks the new store is less efficient than the old store. I agree that many criticisms are valid and nothing can negate that, but I don't think it's fair to say that the new store was clunky, inefficient, and spaced out, as there was literally a less than 24-hour time frame before the store was reverted to the old one. It's extremely easy to say this about a change before actually spending the time getting used to it. I'm actually a bit confused about his claims, specifically all the items you need are right there, because you could make the exact same argument about the new store. Using Anubis as an example since I have footage, the first screen you see when you open the new store is almost identical to the old console store in terms of the items available. You have your recommended starter, relic, shard, etc. in both the old and new store, So I don't know how you can say the old store is so much more efficient and also had all the major necessities right there when you could again make the exact same argument for the new store. So I guess when it comes to my opinion, I think that the new HUD, including the item shop, is a vast improvement over the old one, although it was shipped in a bad state and should have been delayed. I also think that there is a large portion of controller players that didn't take the time to learn the new item shop and went to social media to complain after a few games. I play on controller and experienced almost zero notable bugs when it came to the new HUD, and was also able to navigate the new store fairly quickly after a few days of playing. Granted, this was during PTS, where I acknowledge that 99.9% of the SMITE community didn't touch PTS, but you get the point. I learned the layout regardless, and didn't have too much trouble. I want to emphasize a few things. One, the HUD was not reverted solely due to the pushback from people that just don't like the layout or didn't want to adapt. From my understanding, it was reverted primarily due to technical issues, and I emphasize this because many community members believe that it was reverted solely to people disliking it outside of the technical issues. This is strictly not true. Two, as I said earlier, I believe the new HUD was shipped in a broken state and should have been delayed. Although, I am not high-res, so I'm unsure of the feasibility of delaying it. That being said, it is undeniable that console players were experiencing extremely frustrating bugs and low performance. If these bugs and performance issues are fixed, I don't really see a reason why the new HUD shouldn't be implemented into the game. I want to end this video with a concern towards high-res. I understand that high-res simply cannot test absolutely everything before an update drops, hence why I tend to excuse a lot of smaller bugs that occur. I'm trying to not be ignorant when it comes to QA testing, but it's hard to believe that this update was tested on older Xbox and PlayStation consoles, and either they didn't run into the issues or they simply deemed it passable. I find this hard to believe because it seems that these issues happened to pretty much every player that was on an older generation console. Regardless, there's a semi-popular opinion that Hi-Rez cares less about console than PC, and this update only contributed to that. I know for a fact that they care about console players, and I just hope that they put more care into accommodating for them in future updates. Okay, that was a lot of information, but now I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on both the HUD controversy in general, as well as your thoughts on my perspective. As always, just please keep the comments civil. Thank you guys for watching. This has been Black Eye, and I'll see you in the next video.